Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. It's April the 14th, and we're looking at 1 Samuel, and we're beginning our reading in chapter 29. Now the Philistines gathered together all their armies to Aphek, and the Israelites pitched by the fountain which is Jezreel. And the lords of the Philistines passed by hundreds and thousands, but David and his men passed on in the rear ward of Achish. So they came in the back, the very back of the Philistine army. And when the princes of the Philistines saw David and his men, they said, "What are these Hebrews doing here?" And Achish said, "Oh, they're fine. They're good men. You know, this is David, and he's a good man. We've lived together for quite a long time." And the Philistines were furious, and they said, "Make this fellow go home, because when we're in the middle of the battle, he'll side with Saul, and he will destroy us, and then he will get his favor back with Saul." So Achish said, well, no, I don't want him to do that. But David did leave, and he did leave the battle. And when David left the battle, he left the Philistines. When the Philistines were attacking Saul, they brought about a great victory. But David went back. And when he went back home to Ziklag, he found on the third day that the Amalekites had invaded the south, and Ziklag, which was his own city, had been smitten and burned with fire, and all the women had been taken captives that were therein. And they didn't kill anybody, but they took everybody, small and great, and they carried them all away captives. David and his men came to the city. When they saw that it was burned with fire and their wives and sons and daughters taken away, David and the people that were with him lifted up their voices and wept until they could weep no more. And David's wives were taken captive, Ahinoam and Abigail, and David was greatly distressed, for the people were speaking of stoning him, because the soul of the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. But, and this is my password for today, verse 6, it says, David encouraged himself in God, in his God. David encouraged himself in the Lord, his God. And David said to Abiathar the priest, who was Ahimelech's son, "I pray thee, give me an ephod." And Abiathar brought the ephod to David, and David inquired at the Lord, saying, "Shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them?" And the answer from the Lord was, "Pursue after them, because you will overtake them, and you will recover everything." So David took 600 men that day. They came as far as the brook Besor, and then at the brook Besor he discovered that 200 of them were exceedingly tired. So he let 200 of them stay behind, and he went on. And later he found an Egyptian in the field, and he was brought to David, and David gave him bread and drink and some raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came to him, and because he hadn't eaten for 3 days and 3 nights. And David said to him, "Who do you belong to?" And he says, "Well, I'm a young man of Egypt, a servant of an Amalekite. My master left me because 3 days ago I fell sick. And we made an invasion upon the south of the Kerethites, and upon the coast which belongs to Judah, and upon the house south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire." And David said to him, "Can you bring me to this company?" And he said, "Well, you'll have to swear by God that you won't kill me or deliver me to the hands of my master, but I will bring you down to this company." And so he led David and his men all the way down to where the Philistines were, and they were celebrating. They were eating and drinking and dancing. And David smote them from twilight even until the evening of the next day. He fought them all night and all day, and there didn't escape one man of them apart from 400 young men who had camels and could run away quickly. David recovered all that the Amalekites had taken away. He rescued his 2 wives, and there was nothing lacking of all the people, small or great, sons and daughters, and all the spoil and anything that had been taken. David recovered everything. And David took all the flocks and the herds, and he called it, "This is David's spoil." And when David returned to the camp, there were certain men within his group who were called men of Belial. These are wicked men. And they said, well, we shouldn't share the spoils with those that didn't go to battle. And David said, no. Those that go down to battle, will have as much of the spoils as those who stay by the stuff. They will have a part just the same. And it became a practice in Israel, an ordinance, a statute in Israel, even to this day, that those that stay with the stuff get as much of the spoils as those who take the heat of battle. Now in chapter 31 we have a very sad passage. It's just a small chapter. The Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell down slain in Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines followed hard after Saul upon his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchishua and Saul's sons. And the battle went very sore against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was sore wounded of the archers. Then said David to his armour-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me." But his armour-bearer would not, he was so afraid. So Saul took a sword, and he fell upon his own sword. And when the armour-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he likewise fell upon his sword and died with him. They died together. And so Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armour-bearer, and all his men the same day together. And when the men of Israel that were on the other side of the valley, they that were on the other side of Jordan, saw that the men of Israel fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and they fled. And the Philistines came and dwelt in their cities. And it came to pass on the morrow, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen in Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head, they took off his armour, and they sent into the land of the Philistines round about to publish it in the house of their idols and among the people. And they put in his armour in the house of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. And when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and went at night and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan, and they came to Jabesh, and they burnt them there. And then they took the bones, and they buried them under a tree at Jabesh, and they fasted 7 days. And so this was the end of Saul. A sad end to a tragic life. This was a man who had everything going for him, but he didn't obey the voice of the Lord. He had the Holy Spirit upon him. He had everything. He had all Israel in his favour. But he wasn't a man after God's own heart, and he was a man who played the fool and erred exceedingly. A sad example that we must avoid at all costs. So there's my password for today. At the most difficult time, when David is faced by a people that are in rebellion, it says David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. What a wonderful thing to do. God bless you. Look forward to speaking to you again tomorrow. Bye for now.